You ready?
Yeah,
Ms. Bernstein?
You can
only those in person.
only those
Here. Here.
Oh, for only those in person.
only the ones here, because we have to vote the.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Ms. Christian? Mr. Globinger?
Yes.
Ms. Oliver?
Yes.
Ms. Shu?
Yes.
Ms. Unical?
Yes.
Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have a quorum present in person. We have 2 board members that are ill and cannot attend the board meeting in person. Per our electronic board meeting attendance policy, they're able to participate if the board votes to allow it by participating electronically. So is there a motion to allow them to participate via electronic means, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Barbara. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, Stacy. Jennifer, could we have a roll call of those present? In person.
Thank you. Mr. Globinger?
Yes.
Ms. Oliver?
Yes.
Ms. Shu?
Yes.
And Ms. Unical?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. Sharon and Abby, you may now participate in the meeting via electronic.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
The first item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there anything on the consent agenda that anyone would like to make a motion to remove from the consent agenda for further discussion? Seeing none and hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Motion to approve the consent agenda. as
Thank you,
presented.
Jamie. Is there a second to Jamie's motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Barbara. Jennifer, if we could please have a roll call.
Ms. Bernstein?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Globinger?
Yes.
Ms. Oliver?
Yes.
Ms. Shu?
Yes.
Ms. Young?
Sorry, yes.
Ms. Unical?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is public comment. I believe we have some public here.
No comment, just visiting on behalf of the Friends of the Public Library.
All right, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have you. Right. Next item on the agenda is the staff report. Okay.
Okay, and I'm going to just take my mask off while we do this so that people can hear me a little bit better. So as I put in my report, the statement of economic interest, we're waiting on guidance. Today, Cook County did send those out. You may have seen those in your email. Don't fill it out yet. We're still waiting for the Secretary of State to provide written guidance on how to answer it. They're completely new questions that haven't been done before. So the guidance has not yet been released. So the attorneys are all recommending, not just our firm, all of the attorneys are recommending just waiting. We do have until May. They were supposed to have it out the first week in March. We're hoping that, you know, it will come out before May. But not that I know, but does anyone have any questions on the statement of economic interest or anything that I can take note of now? So when we do get the guidance, if additional clarification is needed, I have those questions, which we can't really. Anyway, does anyone have any?
Does everyone have to participate?
Yes. So the way that it works is that basically anyone that is on the board or that essentially supervises staff or handles money, all have to fill this out every year. So you'll also, you may recall you filled one out as a candidate as well. And so that also is something that you'll have to do, that you do each time you run, in addition to the annual one. And Anna submits the names and then we let you know. Usually it's around this time that they come out every year. So yeah, hopefully we'll hear soon. I also wanted to just check in. I put this in my report. We do not have a photo anymore of all of the board members because we have Stacy and Barbara who were never in the one. So we took the full board picture down off the website. And I'd like to, if everyone is available in April, come at 7 o'clock to do a photo. We can have our photographer come then if everyone is available at that time. Seeing nodding heads. I'm not seeing anyone say no. So then
You're talking about the 21st.
the 21st of April. Okay.
That's a board meeting.
It's the board meeting night, so just coming a half hour early.
Yeah.
So we can do a picture. And we'll do it, for those we do it upstairs in the reference area. So that's nice. And it'll maybe even still be light out then.
I bet it will.
That'll be even more exciting. So does that work for you, Jay?
Yeah, I just wanted to
Okay.
see.
All right, I'm going to keep talking with a couple other updates then. So I also put in my report, we do have 2 additional upcoming ILA trustee workshops coming up, one on April 2nd on library director evaluations and one on streamlining the budget process on May 14th that Stacy, Anna, and I are already signed up to attend. But if anyone would like to attend either of those, you can just send me an email and Anna will get you registered. They are all virtual, so we don't have to go anywhere except to your computer. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is that we, every year in Illinois, there are 4 Children's Choice Awards that are put together for the schools. The Monarch, Blue Stem, Caudle, and Abe Award. And the award lists are typically 20 books, and then kids vote. They have to read a certain number, and then they get to vote on what their favorite book is. So the Abe Lincoln Book Award list was just announced earlier this week, and that is the high school list. And one of the books on it is one of the was the top banned book last year, and so that obviously brings with it some potential concerns. So next month, I've asked our youth services staff to come and just explain a little more about the award, about some of the titles, so that the board kind of understands in the event that there are any questions that come in from the community. Obviously, we rely very heavily on our material reconsideration request form. If anyone has requests to remove or move titles in the collection, we also have in the policy that the board has approved the ALA Bill of Rights, which talks about the freedom to read. And of course, the library has lots of materials in it on a variety of different topics. So we'll be talking more about that next month, but I just wanted to give everyone a heads up. And that was all I had, unless anyone had any questions on anything on my report.
Would it be helpful if we read that book?
Sure, we can have you guys, if you guys would like copies of that, we can certainly order some. It is a YA, the book is called Gender Queer by Maya Joby. I might be mispronouncing the last name, but
That's the one I sent you the other. I think that's the one. Oh, sorry. Like
No.
someone was complaining.
Oh, that
to
was the
me.
one last fall.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Never mind. Yes.
Sorry, I'm like, wait, not recently. Yeah,
No,
last
no, no,
fall.
no.
Last fall.
Yes. Yes. Sorry.
And so it is a young adult graphic novel memoir about a transgender individual who is exploring like who exactly they are, and trying to understand kind of like what is their brain telling them. And so it's a coming of age story. And yeah, I would be happy to get copies for everyone. Would everyone like a copy?
No, thanks.
Okay, Jay's good. Yeah, everyone else is nodding. Okay, great. I would be happy to do
Thank
that.
you.
Sure. It's a quick read. I read it. It took me maybe 45 minutes. So it's not, I'm also like graphic novels read pretty quick. So yeah. Any other questions that I can answer from my report? Okay, great.
Next item on the agenda is the board member reports. Are there any board members that have anything they would like to report back or talk about? Seeing none and hearing none, I'll move on. Next item is unfinished business. First item on that part of the agenda is the fiscal year 23 budget. There have been no changes to the budget from last month. Are there any further questions anyone has from last month that they'd like to ask? Time. Okay, seeing none and hearing none. Is there a motion to approve the fiscal year 23 budget for $9,112,550, which includes operating IMRF, FICA, and debt service?
Motion to approve the fiscal year 23 budget as presented. Is that okay?
Thank you, Jamie. Is there a second to Jamie's motion?
I'll second it.
All right, thanks both Barbara and Sharon. Jennifer, we could have a roll call, please.
Ms. Bernstein,
Yes.
Mr. Globinger,
Yes.
Ms. Oliver,
Yes.
Ms. Shu,
Yes.
Ms. Young,
Yes.
Ms. Unical.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes and the budget has been approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the unfinished business is the Palatine Library visit. So there was a doodle poll sent out for April. There were no dates that were mutually convenient. So a new doodle poll was sent out yesterday for May. If you haven't already filled it out, please do. I know I haven't, so I'm just as guilty as anyone else. Is there anybody who had any comments or questions on the dates or the timing? Okay, so we'll have some follow-up after the meeting on the Palatine Library visit in May. Next item on the agenda is new business. The first item under new business is the tuition reimbursement policy update. Kate, do you want to spend a second just talking about it?
Sure,
real
yeah,
quick?
so we had approved approved a tuition reimbursement policy a few years ago. And as everyone knows, the job market is significantly different now. I also feel that, as you know, we have long focused on focusing on the MLS or LTA certification, and those are still very valuable degrees. But we also recognize that as an institution of lifelong learning, there are certainly other degrees that are equally helpful, like no offense to Anna, but her having an MLS would not be terribly helpful. We're much happier that she's a CPA. So that does us a lot more good. And so we would like to change the policy to apply a broader lens to what we will approve. So we're not asked, like each year with the budget, we'll approve a certain amount. So that wouldn't, the process for that wouldn't really change, but it would give us a greater lens to look at and approve things that we typically didn't before that were outside of an MLS or LTA degree program. And of course, this will, we hope, help with staff retention in addition to, reinforcing our lifelong learning ethos. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions on the policy.
Sharon or Abby, did either of you have questions? Okay. Seeing no questions, is there a motion to approve the tuition reimbursement policy as presented?
Motion to approve the tuition reimbursement policy.
Thank you, Stacy. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Abby and Jamie both seconded. So this one, we don't need a roll call, so we do because of the
Video, sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at your notes.
I'm
Kate. You're
sorry,
allowed to
I
see.
know. I
Yes,
forgot
Jennifer,
that
I
one.
apologize. Can you do please roll call?
Ms. Bernstein,
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Globinger,
Yes.
Ms. Oliver,
Yes.
Ms. Shu,
Yes.
Ms. Young,
Yes.
Ms. Unical.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Cedar Lane project. Kate's gonna have a quick update and then we can have a little bit of discussion, but I don't think there's a lot here for us to discuss.
No, so for Stacy and Barbara, who have not been here as long, we have had for quite some time now some challenges with vehicles hitting our building. The board had looked at a number of different options, and then the village had approached us and said, like, hey, we're looking at updating Cedar Lane. And so it looked like an opportunity to kind of meld these two projects together. Of course, COVID put a number of stops in that along the way. And so the village board was discussing Cedar Lane and kind of their part and what they would like to see happen. You may recall that we did have Matt Farmer come and talk about this last fall. I don't remember what the date was. And he, and we were kind of moving forward. Since then, the village board has developed a downtown ad hoc committee, and they consider the library and village hall and Greenbrier all part of the downtown campus. And so they are putting the Cedar Lane project on hold until they kind of figure out what they're doing with the overall downtown footprint. And so they are going to do a few minor tweaks right now, but then the bigger stuff that we were thinking about isn't going to happen until the other piece is in place. So they're going to be putting an all-way stop in at Cedar and Cherry, which is great because we often get a lot of comments from people crossing from the north side of Cherry south that it is because they don't want to go to the crosswalk. They want to cross right where the library is, which makes sense. But of course, it's also rather dangerous. So that will hopefully help with that. They're also going to add some additional pedestrian crossways, hopefully just along Cedar a little bit. And they'll do some basic road repair as well. And then just some minor landscape improvements, nothing on the library campus, but just along the Cedar Lane corridor between Cherry and Walters. And then anything major would be something that once they decide what we're doing, once the downtown committee decides, that would be something then that we could look at in terms of our own landscaping, which is what we were planning to have as part of it. We were also looking at our stairs and ramps, which do need some updating. And then also looking at some alternatives to how we can reroute buses coming in, as well as delivery trucks, having it be more specified where they should park on Cedar so they're not coming into our parking lot. Although that isn't usually the issue. It's usually people coming for programs from facilities, but that has not been an issue, but it's starting to be because we're now doing a lot more in-person programming. So, so that is the plan. That is what is happening on the village side. I wanted to give you an update so that we could find out if there's anything that you would like to see us doing.
Yes, so Kate and I talked about it. One of my concerns is if we were to go along and do something without coordinating with the village, when the village comes back and then redesigns the Cedar and Cherry area, we may be looking at having to redo what we've already done or to do it differently. And so to be a little bit economical and efficient, it seems best to coordinate with the village, especially if we're looking to try and see if the village will allow us to some way, shape, or form connect our parking lot with the village hall, so that there is a route that can be used for trucks to exit without their having to go into the building. Or if we're looking to do some form of two-way along the south side of the building, which may involve the entrance and exit on Cedar Lane being redesigned. So that was kind of what we were discussing, especially if it's going to be part of a larger overall process and planning. It just didn't seem to make sense to do something that isn't coordinated.
Sense.
Any questions that anyone had about Cedar project? Okay, seeing none and hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on. The next item on the agenda is the board officer nominating committee. So annually, we have to re-elect our board. The way our
Just
bylaw,
the officers.
well, right, the officers, I'm sorry, the officers on the board. That's what I meant. I meant the
Yeah, no.
officers.
For those listening from home.
Yeah. So because it's an annual process, every spring we're having a nominating committee. That's because the way our bylaws are currently written, the bylaws require an annual election of the officers. One of the things we could do, if there's interest with the board, is to amend the bylaws to allow for a term for an officer to last more than 1 year. We could have it so that the terms last 2 years, which would allow the board to stay in place, not have the nominating process every year, and then the board would, in some way, shape, or form, turn over as we're having election cycles every 2 years. And by the board, I mean the overall board and the officers together could turn over. But in order to do that, we would have to amend the bylaws. And so part of the question for the board in discussion is that an issue that anyone would like to see addressed? Or are we happy just leaving it as it's been done, as long as we've all been here with the annual nominating process? And the idea just being that we could eliminate a little bit of the annual process as we go through, and to the benefit of having officers in for multiple years, because you allow someone to develop and to become comfortable over a year, and then to maintain that process over a second year. Kate and I talked about a little bit, if we were to amend it, one of the concerns is how do you amend it relative to the election cycle? Do you try and do the board election in between election cycles? Or do you try and coordinate it so that the board election process takes place after an election, but before a nomination and swearing in of, I'm not going to say nomination, but the swearing in of a new board or new board members who are, elected in an election process, so that we're not having a process where we elect a board that has 2-year cycle, but in between someone could be not reelected onto the board, and now you're having in an odd year to replace or fill a vacancy of the officer position. So it's just some thoughts, and it's not something we necessarily have to decide today, but we thought we'd bring it up for discussion so that if during the course of this year we wanted to amend it, we could do it during the course of the year.
It's a good question. Is it worth exploring staggering the 2 years?
Well, for the officers,
So that nobody, because it was,
usually when you talk about staggering, you're talking about staggering the actual directors on the board itself, as opposed to the officer positions. So, to stagger the officers, you would stagger maybe president, vice president, but it's not typical to do that.
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I mean, typically when you're talking about like a large board of 7, the staggering is the election process, which we already have. So. Any thoughts or comments, Abby? Or
So
Sharon?
Jay, can I ask a question? So this is, you're talking about, like, before, we used to do like a small committee to reach out to individual, board members to see if they have an interest, and if they have an interest, then we nominate them. And that was a big part where you sort of had to pull people out and say, do you want to be responsible and reach out to people to, see if they're interested in maintaining the position, or are they interested? Is that what we're talking about?
Right. The question is, do you want to continue doing that on an annual basis? Or would you like to see us amend the bylaws so that takes place not every year, but every 2 years?
Yeah, I think I like that. I think you're right. I think most people who are in that position can do it for a year. We're a familial group that if there was any, discontent, I think we would know about it. I think the treasurer position is pretty hard. So I don't know, that, but 2 years, I think that's when you kind of do get up and running.
I was actually thinking sort of the opposite, in that it's not a lot of work to do it every year, like to have a committee. I mean, it's a little work, but it's not that much. And just because we have had new members join, like if other people want opportunities to rotate through those positions, it makes it a little easier. I can go either way, but I don't see it as being a terrible burden to do it every year.
You're right. It's not a burden. It's not a burden. And you know what, Abby, that's great feedback, because I've been on the board for so long. And for me, it's not work. I feel like it's just something we do. And maybe that's not the case, that it is from someone newer on the board. So
yeah, because I think, have been on for a longer time. And so we feel like we've had the opportunity, but like for the newer people, I guess I'd be interested in what they think, if they want more opportunities each year to be like, okay, I've been doing this for a year for now. I think I'd be able to take a, what are they called?
sabbatical.
No, what do you call? Take one of the, not leadership role. I can't even. I'm sorry.
I know, what is officers?
An officer. I can't think of the word. So I don't know what the newer board members think. I'd be curious as to your thoughts. Like if someone's, interested.
Well, Stacy or Barbara? I mean, yeah, Barbara, it's the two of you are the newest, so what are your thoughts? Do you have any?
I just think that, the transition, that's why I mentioned staggering, because it would be terrible if you and whoever, for whatever reason, move or go away, that there's the continuity of somebody who is already in place and is aware of it. I don't have an issue with it either way.
You're shaking your head, yes, so.
I mean, it's my fourth meeting, so I don't have a lot of context. In general.
Jamie, what about you?
I'm kind of indifferent too. I kind of, I agree with Abby. I kind of like the flexibility of
Okay.
the way the current way is.
don't
But
hear
if people feel like the other way, they like the stability more, like I don't have a strong opinion either. Yeah.
I don't hear any strong opinions in favor of it as opposed to against it, so I don't see any reason to change unless there's a really strong feeling on the board's part that we needed to. It's something that we can always do in the future if after some of you, have more experience on the board, you feel it's not necessary to keep doing it every year. So, having discussed that, the next item really is to put together a nominating committee for the officer positions for the next fiscal year. So are there any volunteers to participate in the nominating process?
If I could just, since this is Stacy's first or fourth meeting, so typically what it is 3 board members. We have one meeting in between the March and April board meetings. After that, they ask individually each board member, do you want to be an officer? Are you interested? Which positions? And then meet again before the May board meeting to put together a slate. And then that's presented at the May board meeting and voted on. There have never been any nominations from the floor. Were there any before?
No, I mean,
Yeah.
it's typically, once the nominating committee presents, at that point, because you've already canvassed everybody, it's known that you do or don't want to.
Yeah.
I would be happy to be on it.
I'll do it. I didn't do it last year.
So Barbara, Abby, we need one more.
I'll do it.
So Barbara, Abby, and Stacy, thank you.
We'll be in touch to set up a date.
All right, the next item that Kate has on the agenda is closed session, but there's no reason for us to go into closed session at the moment. Agenda building. So at the next agenda, we'll be talking about transferring funds to the debt service and CIF funds. We'll set meeting dates for the next fiscal year. And the Abe Lincoln Book Award presentation will take place.
Mhm.
Are there any items that anyone would like to raise for inclusion on the next agenda? Okay, seeing none, hearing none. Is there anything else that the board anyone would like to bring up for this board meeting? Seeing none, hearing none, I will declare this meeting adjourned.